Without a shadow of a doubt, it's the crunkiest show in social media history. I want to welcome you to another episode of the War Zone. I got my man in the building, Donovan Sadiq. Live from California, I got my girl, Demetra K. And I am the 5-star general. Say, man, we're going to switch the subject matter up tonight. It's called the war on drugs. And they talking about they trying to fix it. Well, how you going to fix something that you started? I was just thinking about that, but tonight we're going to talk about that and a couple of more things. Let's get to it, man. Say, man, I want to welcome you to another episode of the War Zone and tell you thank you for tuning in. You know, we say it every night, we mean it. Without you guys, we would not have a show. And we appreciate you taking the time to come in and hang out with us. And it's a beautiful thing. I want to start it off by saying that Tasha Jackson, what's up, baby? Yeah, I bear gifts. I'm finna put the DA and the city attorney on the hot seat. Yeah, everything is done. Everything is notarized. I recommend, baby, that you do this. Give serious consideration to just walking away. Because if you don't, my man Ken Paxton gonna get you in a way that you ain't never been got before. So, Mr. City Attorney, Miss DA, I'm finna put you on the hot seat. And ain't nothing you can do about it. And I want to celebrate me today because today I just accepted my official internship with the Robinett Law Firm because I'm majoring in criminal justice. So they're going to let me come hang out with them and really learn the game. So if you need a good attorney, man, holla at your boy 5-star, man, because we're going to make some things happen, man. So I told y'all we ain't playing. We coming to the hood and we going to get this done. And I want to thank Paula Robinett for taking me on and let me learn the game. Donovan, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Monday here in the War Zone. It is snowing and hailing in Southern California. Those of y'all that put off that gas and the electric bill, y'all paying for it right now here in California. But I want to give a special shout out to Demetra K, who has landed in Southern California and has graced our presence here as she checks the landscape and she sees what the poor people are doing out here. So, but in the news today, they delivered to the Senate the impeachment articles to impeach Donald J. Trump. There's only been 4 impeachments in the United States history. 2 of them, half, go to Donald J. Trump. And once again, the Republicans are now backtracking as they do not see, well, I wouldn't even say white Republicans. White supremacy is backtracking because they do not see insurrection for their people as a crime. And I want you guys to remember what I'm going to say right now. Treason doth not prosper, said an English poet. Why is that? Because if it prospers, none dare call it treason. This one didn't prosper, so it is called treason. So we're going to see how everything goes. Demetra, tell us what's going on in the genius household over there.
So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the War Zone. I hope you guys are all having a fabulous day and beginning of the week. If you could do us a favor and share the live so that everybody else can get the information and join in on the conversation, we would greatly appreciate it. And yes, right now I'm in California, but I will be back. And as they say affectionately in H-Town tomorrow. So, yeah. But just before we give it to Gary about the war on drugs, we want to talk about the $20 bill that they want to now, the Biden administration is now pushing to put Harriet Tubman on. You guys know that was some sort of a debate a couple years back. Somebody mentioned putting Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill, and they said, yeah, we're going to kind of phase her in, have her share with Andrew Jackson and blah, 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 which is kind of weird. But a lot of people are seeing that as symbolism and saying, you guys are going forth with legislation to change the $20 bill to Harriet Tubman but you won't go forth to actually put the reparations in gear for the descendants of, slaves. So it's just kind of crazy. But more than anything, it's more symbolism. So anyway, Gary, what you got?
I'm sitting around yesterday and I'm looking at this documentary on Netflix called Crack about the war on drugs. And I'm just sitting there and I'm watching the demise of black people, how it really went down and all this. And then I'm thinking about the war on drugs now. And we were supposed to talk about this tomorrow, but I'm like, D say, man, I want to hang out with y'all. And I'm like, okay, well, because I really want you on this subject. So I'm like, okay, let's switch this thing up. So as I'm watching it, and I know about the crack era. I was there. I saw it firsthand. And that's why I'm telling y'all, everybody talking so bad about Trump. But, when you think about what Ronald Reagan did, and how bad it was for black people and poor people in general, it was unreal. And the deficit was so horrible that, in urban neighborhoods is what they called us. You had no choice but to do something because there were no jobs. He had kicked X amount of people, millions of people off of food stamps. And there was nothing left for us. And then all of a sudden, crack shows up. And I listen to people now, and I listen to how they talk as it pertains to Joe Biden and his crime bill. And I'm like, well, how you gonna fight the war on drugs when you created the whole drug culture? How you get to fix something that you created? And I was just amazed by it. As many times as I watch these documentaries, it never ceases to amaze me. And I'm like, what they did to us, they did this to us. They dropped this in our neighborhoods, man. And then I started thinking about nowadays and how they don't want the wall. And okay, but the wall is not just to me for illegal immigrants. The wall was to stop the drugs from coming in. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like dumbfounded about how dumb people can be and the way that they talk down on people who sell drugs, even nowadays. And I thought about how they say we gotta do something back when it was going on. But then when you look at all the dynamics that played a part in it, the United States of America created the crack culture. They created the crack culture. And now you look at the demise of black people, look at our neighborhoods, and I think about the pandemic of how it's ravished the United States. But really, realistically, the most horrible pandemic that we've ever had as a black people was the crack culture. So, Donovan, what you think, man? Because I'm gonna get into it, but that's how I want to start it off.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, the evidence has come out over and over again. Even the CIA director who actually did it testified to Congress that they were knowingly doing that and dropping the drugs off in our community to do counterintelligence stuff in, what's that country in Central America and all those countries over there, El Salvador and all those things like that. But then what does that tell you about black people? Again, even the government, when they want to open up a business and get some extra dough and get money out of our community, they come to the black community to do it because they know you can shut up. Because like I said, the CIA, did they go to Beverly Hills? Do they go to the suburbs in Orange County, California, and those big mansions in Atlanta? No, they said, we're going to go to the black community, put this shit down there with them, make some money off it so we could buy guns. And then if you follow this whole story about how crack ended up in the black community, how many of you guys realize that George Bush, Daddy Bush, pardoned everybody that was involved in it toward the end. Toward the end, he said, because nobody was paying attention. Nobody had really knew what was happening. And he pardoned all of these people toward the end. And then after Daddy Bush gets out, right, had the highest number of any president coming out off the Gulf War and all that other stuff, Bill Clinton gets in office. How many of you guys followed the drugs that came out of Central America and stuff that were flown into Arkansas, into an airport right there in Arkansas that Bill Clinton, when he was governor, authorized and knew about? And that very drug that flew into Arkansas transferred into South Central Los Angeles and all across the nation in these Black neighborhoods. All of these people are connected. They're all making money off of it. So I'm not surprised at it. But again, white supremacy is about staying on top no matter who they got to kill.
So yeah, absolutely. The war on drug. I mean, where do you start, right? And forgive me if I seem to be freezing up a little bit. I'm not at home on my own computer, so forgive me. I will work through it. But most of us heard the war on drugs in the 80s with the Reagan administration. You guys also remember Nancy Reagan, who was the wife of President Ronald Reagan. She had this campaign that said, just say no to drugs. You saw the red stickers everywhere in schools, right? They wanted you to say no to drugs. But the other part that they didn't mention is, why do we have to say no to drugs? How did the drugs even get to be a problem, and specifically crack? The crack era took off in the 80s, especially in our neighborhoods. And they forgot to mention that. But it was also during the Reagan administration where the CIA, was dropping drugs and guns and a whole bunch of stuff off in our neighborhoods. And it was discovered that was due, it was to dilapidate, rather, the Black community to finish destroying it. We already know there's all these initiatives that took place via the government to destroy the Black community, and this was one of those things. And then, of course, I know you guys don't want to hear this, but that's where Biden comes in. Biden was there when all these crime bills were made to make people responsible for not only selling the drugs, the cocaine, or the crack, let's call it what it is, the crack, but he also made laws to punish people for smoking the crack. And so then you think about the war on drugs, is like, well, the war on drugs really should have taken place in the White House. Should have taken place with the CIA, because that's where the war started. The Black people really are just a casualty of war. And then you hear people, because, then you want to throw Kamala into the mix, where people say, well, Kamala was just doing her job. She's doing her job as a prosecutor, locking people up. Well, it's like, no, she wasn't doing her job. The real issue is, why did she have to do that job? And it's because, and I guess what I was really trying to say, I kind of lost track. I was really trying to say is, when people were talking about Kamala, they wanted to make excuses for it and say, well, those people shouldn't have been doing the drugs. They shouldn't have been doing the crime. If you commit the crime, you got to do the time. But it's like, well, tell the whole story. Tell the story of why those crimes were being committed. That stuff was being dropped off into neighborhoods where the jobs were no longer. Those factories were closed up. Big factories in our neighborhoods is what kept our families afloat. Then you had feminism come into play, and a man was, some ways kicked out of the household, and men were being locked up. It was just a lot of things going on. And so then you have these drugs. So if a man can't eat, what is he going to do? And Gary tells a story all the time. It wasn't an optimal situation for him to do what he was doing, but he had a need that needed to be filled. And so that's what happened with a lot of people in our community. They picked up the drugs and they started to sell them. And as I was explaining to somebody last night, and I'll give you this, Gary, give it back to you. You had young boys, and I'm no expert on this at all, but you had young boys who were making, thousands a week, when their dad, might have been flipping a burger somewhere at McDonald's, not making nowhere near that. And so then you tell these kids, well, go get a good, honest job. What, so I can struggle when I can go flip these rocks or whatever and, eat like a king and all of that. And so we're going to get into it, but it's levels to this. So never just believe, oh, we got to do the war on drugs and Black people. We got to stop doing cocaine. There's levels to it. And so, Gary, I give it back to you.
Yeah, well, let's start at, what made it even pop off. Like I said, Ronald Reagan was the devil. Came in with all this fanfare of how, they were going to make things better. It sounds so familiar when I look at Joe Biden. He was going to make things better. Then all of a sudden, everybody started losing their jobs. They couldn't feed themselves. They couldn't do anything. Now, me, I'm an honest guy because, I never was comfortable when I was out there in the streets. Back then, you could hustle all night long and not have a problem on the block. It wasn't no murder game popping off when it first popped off. It showed up in our neighborhoods. I'm watching my daddy make, $1,000 a month before he got sick, 1,000 a month. And I could sit on the porch and make 1,000 in 3 hours. Easily. No questions about it. Could make 1,000 in 3 hours. I remember when I got in, my mom and dad were both sick. I could not find a job anywhere. So those that want to say, well, you could find a job, it wasn't jobs. It wasn't any jobs from Houston to LA to New Orleans, everywhere. It was no jobs. You couldn't find one. And I'd be damned if I'm going to try to feed my family working at McDonald's. And you don't even want to know what the minimum wage was back in 1986, 87. The three something an hour. There was no way we could survive. That's when all of us that's old school, that's the ones of us that know about the cheese and the block that you had to go get in the free milk. So what could a kid do? My partner was a big dude in the game, and he really didn't want me in the game, wanted me to do something with my life, but I'm like, dog, I gotta do something, man. So I remember he crushed me a 1/4 ounce, and I got 18 rocks out of a 1/4 ounce. And I sold him 18 rocks in 5 minutes. Now, I want you to understand that back then he was cheating the hell out of us. I love him to death till this day. I was only getting 20 off of 100. But if I could sell 100 in 5 minutes and make $20, all I had to do is just keep grinding. So the more I grind, the more money I would make. And in less than a 3-month period, I went from 18 rocks to owning, which I know I did, and I drive that route all the time just, to remember where I came from. 18 rocks to owning an 8-block radius. 8-block radius to where I'm making, just me hustling, at least $30,000 a day. Okay, and now people like, you sold drugs. You goddamn right, I didn't have no choice. There was nothing else. So it started like that. They dropped the drugs off in the neighborhoods. And then you tell us, okay, well, since you selling it, we're going to lock you up for selling it. Well, why you get to lock me up for selling it when your ass the one brought it here? You knew what you were doing. And the decimation that came from it. Whoa, bro, I saw it firsthand. I saw nice looking women like Demetra looking like a rock star on a Monday and a scarecrow on a Tuesday. You could get ass for $10. Don't, and I be tripping on some of these dudes, man. Oh man, I would never fuck with no crackhead woman. You a damn lie. You were getting that crackhead ass. And then I listened to people, men and women, both sides of the ball. Man, that was so wrong. Well, baby, you didn't have no problem dating a drug dealer. You was living off the drug money. You see what I'm saying? So for all my dudes that got caught up in the game, I prayed for them. And a lot of us escaped the game. And people like, man, how did you get out? What made you get out? Well, one, I was smart. And people ask me all the time, how bad was it for you? I never got bent over a cop car because I was smart. One, I researched the game before I got in. I watched it. So, no, never got bent over a cop car. But it was pretty easy to get away with it if you knew what cops to pay off. You just paid the motherfucker out. Everybody was getting paid in the crack game. The crooked lawyers, the judges, the cops, and the victims of it, which were us, were not treated the same way as white folk who now deal with the opiate epidemic. Donovan?
That's exactly where I was going. Here we are doing whatever we're doing. They put crack in our neighborhood, but basically the same exact drug. And then the white person gets caught, they get probation, we get 3 to 7, straight down. And the whole system, to me, it's just amazing how they set this system up. Even in an illegal game known as the drug game, there's still white supremacy within it. Now, here in California, LAPD, deep into the drug game. They were taking evidence, cocaine out of evidence lockers and selling it on the streets and had their little runners on the streets. And it was just a crazy time. However, yes, it's a negative to be selling drugs and all that other stuff. But let's talk about some of the positive that came out of that. How many Black businesses were started because of the dope game? How many clothing lines were started? Record companies were started. You know what I mean? Golly, Death Row, he just got a probation. Death Row, with the guy that funded Death Row, that changed the whole rap game in the 90s. He just got out. But not everybody just lived New Jack City and just did it for them. How many drug dealers in the neighborhoods provided for what the politicians weren't providing for? There's a lot of drug money that seeded a lot of you guys that had your startup businesses in the early 90s, and some of you guys even today, that is still going on. So whenever I hear people always like dogging out the drug dealer, I firmly believe a person doesn't wake up and say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and break the law and be a drug dealer and just put my life on the line and throw it away if I get caught to do this. A lot of people that get in the drug game, they're doing it. There's no jobs, there's no opportunities. I can't tell a man how to feed his family because, and I don't know, maybe I'm kind of vexed on this, but you're locking up a drug dealer who is no different than Walmart or a pharmacist or anybody else. He's not making people, putting a gun to people's heads saying, come buy my shit. You know what I mean? You're locking that guy up, but you're not even bothering even to look for the guy that's bringing the shit into the country and the guy that's getting his cut off the top as he drops the dope into the community. So, I always thought there was something wrong with that. And I thought it was bullshit how it was set up, how you let those guys go, which is the problem. And you're going after the people that is just doing distribution. I used to tell people, especially young drug dealers, don't tell me you aren't smart. Don't tell me you can't do logistics and stuff of that nature. Because think about it. If you're a drug dealer, you got to know the numbers. You got to know how to distribute. It's a whole thing to be able to do that. And you're doing it with no college education. The whole thing was just amazing. It was just amazing.
Well, let me lead D into this. Cedric Lewis said they were given 5 years for one rock. Saying, let me break it down to you. They were given 5 years for 1 gram. But the sentencing disparities was in order for a white person who was dealing with the actual powder cocaine, the sentencing disparities were 100 to 1. So for a white person to get the same 5 years for powder cocaine, they would have to have 100 grams of powder cocaine compared to that 1 rock, which was 1 gram. They knew what they were doing. But the way that they treated the crack epidemic was instead of getting us the help that we needed, because you had several different types of drug addicts. You had the person that was on the drugs, and then you had Gary W. Monroe, who was addicted to selling it. You see what I'm saying? So 100 to 1 is the way they sentenced us.
No, yeah, absolutely. And again, I just want to remind you guys, because this is, I made a commitment, I can only speak for myself, that I would hold the Biden Harris administration accountable, and those are the laws that Joe Biden put into place. And it, as of now, that, at least as last I know, he hasn't done anything legislatively to correct some of the crime bills that he wrote. He was supposed to be doing some sort of crime reform, and everybody's still waiting for him to do that. And so let's always remember that he is the godfather of destroying generations of Black people due to his crime bills that said you go to jail for selling a little crack, and not just, jail like 30 days. We talking about 30 years plus. They put these mandatory minimums in place to where judges, even though they thought, hey, it's just sold a little crack. I'm not trying to minimize it because, crack actually devastated our communities. But, there might have been a judge that said, well, I don't think you should spend, the majority of your life in prison. I'm going to give you a couple of months in the, city. They couldn't do that because of the mandatory minimums. But I want to talk about, and Angela, let me get to your comment really quick. You said, I told my kid's dad he had to stop selling and get a real job. He stopped selling and got 2 jobs. I want to have a man. I think I don't want to have a man selling drugs. I make honest money, all money. I think he meant ain't good money. I mean, yeah, and I get that. You want your man to have an honest job, but, let's keep it real. Everybody's not going to walk up into IBM and score, a 6-figure salary every year, But again, like I said, I just think it takes for us to have the whole conversation as to why a lot of people chose to sell drugs. And I want to personally talk about the other side of it as far as drug addicts, people who are addicted to crack. That's not something personally that I've done, but I have someone near and dear to me who suffered with a crack addiction for, nearly 25 years. And we're not talking to see, because when you think of, and I hate to use the word crackhead because it is demeaning. They're a drug addict, for lack of better words. They're a drug addict. Just the choice of drugs is maybe not as glamorous. But when we think of somebody who's addicted to crack, we think of somebody who's, doesn't have much to live for, and they're just kind of a low life. Maybe they, aren't doing much with their life. But crack affected all types of people. And the person I'm speaking of was a businessman, worked for himself. Highly religious. Would never ever you would never put him and crack together. It was just mind blowing. And so I think we also need to take into account the devastation that it caused in our communities and the level of people that it took from our community. It took business people who were giving back to the community, role models. It took a whole lot of high influence from our communities. And so when they say war on drugs, it wasn't just the war on drugs. It was the war on the people and war on Black families. So that's why I say we always need to have the whole conversation.
Jeffrey McFarland said it the best way that I think you can say it. Drugs fucked us up bad, man. That shit fucked us up bad, man. But the thing is, Angela, thank you for being honest, because you dated a drug dealer. Miss, I'm perfect. You dated a drug dealer. Oh, you got to stop. But the thing is when you met him, you fell off into it. You cannot lie and say the money wasn't good money. Now, I'm a man that believes in supply and demand. I believe that one of the best albums that I've ever heard in my life is from a guy from South Central Los Angeles, CJ Mack. And it's called True Game. You know what I'm saying? And that boy, if you go listen to that album right now, he breaks it down, when he talks about the drug game. And the thing was, till this day, I don't talk bad about dudes that sell drugs because I don't know their situation. And for those that's talking about just go get a job, shit wasn't possible back then. So how were we supposed to survive? Some of us did the best that we could do. Me, I just got sick and tired of the fact that I couldn't put more than $10,000 in the bank. See, this is where the murder game came in, because dudes that was the jackals knew you couldn't put all that money in the bank. See, Texas wasn't Miami. In Miami, they had the bank game on lock too, because they could just go and do what they need to do. And you pay off the bankers and they'll let you put that money in the bank. But in Texas, they was watching that shit. So I got sick and tired of not being able to put more than $10,000 in the bank, keeping all this goddamn money in the house. And people like, man, what kind of money you had now? Really, dog, garbage bags full of money. I couldn't put it in the bank. I couldn't buy a house legally. And I'm like, I'm sick of this shit. And that's what made me walk away, because I had enough money to walk away. Because the way that you end up getting caught back in the day, you just didn't know when to stop. You didn't know when to stop. See, greed is a pandemic in itself when it comes to black people some days. But me, I wasn't a greedy dude. I mean, back then I didn't smoke cigarettes. My trick bill was low. Oh, I'm telling y'all, my trick bill was really low. I didn't do drugs. So all I was doing was, and guess what I called it? Stacking paper like Trump. That's what I called it. I was stacking paper like Trump, because Trump was the dude that had the money. So when I started doing the research, and then it brought me all the way up to now, because I'm constantly researching it. How did this shit get started, man? And then I looked at the comment Donovan made of how the U.S. military is still protecting the poppy fields. You're still screaming about the war on drugs, but you're protecting the very fields where the drugs actually started overseas. Supply and demand. I understood that alcohol used to be illegal in the United States of America. They figured out a way to tax it. I figured out that tobacco used to be illegal in the United States of America. They figured out how to tax it, because you could get all this stuff made right here on U.S. soil. But they couldn't figure out how to tax it because it was coming from foreign countries. Okay, well, if we can't tax it, then we got to make some more money off this. And that's when they created them crime bills, which they had been creating them, but they enhanced them. They put them on steroids, because now we're going to lock these motherfuckers up and we're going to make some more money off of them. You see what I'm saying? But the devastation that came from it, we're still living with the devastation until this day, because the crack babies, they didn't have babies. And now them babies are the ones that's wrecking havoc right now. You see what I'm saying? So you had kids come out with deformities. You had kids that came out with mental disorders. And the United States of America does not want to own up to the fact that you created what is actually going on now. You don't want to admit that you fucked up. But when I look at, like you said, who goes to jail? Man, I agree with you, Dimitri and Donovan. The biggest crack dealer in the 80s was Ronald Reagan. It was Ronald Reagan. But yet you got my homeboys locked up for life. When this motherfucker here, it was proven, along with Oliver North, that you motherfuckers sent this shit in here. That's why I wish I could drink a beer with Freeway Rick and Ross right now. You see what I'm saying? I don't talk down on Rick. Shit, you supposed to get your money, man. You put it in our neighborhoods, and those that want to talk down on it, fuck you, because you benefited off the crack era.
What's really funny is, I saw in the comments now, all of you people that served in the military, you guys know what I'm talking about. The first thing we did when we went into Afghanistan was we secured those damn poppy seeds. That's the first thing we do, and we're not even shutting the shit down. Now, especially for you guys that joined the Army and the Marine Corps, you guys remember being on those big ass airplanes, and they had these big ass pallets full of money and stuff that you weren't allowed to see unless you were the load master or whatever, full of drugs. I know you probably forget about it, but I know some of you guys wondered what was on that pallet, what was actually going on. So you guys are familiar. If you were in the military, you know what's going on. How many of you guys remember the CIA airline, Southern Air, that is still going on today? They fly C-130 tactical, and you will hear them on the radios if you're flying airplanes or you're at an airport. They come in the dark of night, and they just do their shit. And until this very day, we are still doing drugs. America is still supplying drugs. We control that Poppy airfield. And like you said, 5 Star, it's about supply and demand. As long as people are going to use it, we have to make a group of people addicted to a drug that has a continuous flow of money and just keep it going. And we're still doing that to this very day. And it's I'm not saying it's sad, but the real criminals are allowed to get away with it while we're dealing with people who are basically not saying they're insignificant, but they're really not doing a crime. They're not forcing people to use drugs. They're not. And instead of like admitting, oh, we messed up and whatever, we need to fix this problem. When the drugs started spilling over into the white folks, immediately it was a national crisis. But when it was in the black neighborhood, they're just animals, we'll just lock them up and whatever. But as soon as the addictions and the drugs spilled over to their community, oh, we have to do an all-out assault on this epidemic.
No, yeah, absolutely. And the war on drugs, it was kind of like two-pronged, if you will. So the war on drugs, just to kind of piggyback off your point, Donovan, for white people was we got to get a hold of this. We got to get them help. There needs to be rehab. And, it's more like a savior thing when it came to white people. But when it came to black people, it was a punishment. We need to right this wrong, if you will, by, in the words of, Hillary Clinton, making them heal, making them pay for what they're doing, because as Joe Biden said, he heard that crack made people do things, acting and I'm paraphrasing, but in a manner that was dangerous. But really what that was dangerous to white people. He even said, I don't, want them to bash my mother in the head, or your mother in the head. So when you talk about the war on drugs, as I said, it's two-pronged. For white people, we need to get them help. Because also, they realize that the planet is browning, and the last thing they can afford to do is lose more white people, especially to drugs. But, as far as black people are concerned, get them off the streets, even if it means locking them up for the rest of their natural life or their young life. And I know a lot of people have a lot of issues with Trump, even as he's been impeached or the process of being impeached for the second time. As he left, he did free a lot of people who were in prison, for a very long time, some of them life, for low level drug offenses. And so, again, when you think about the war on drugs, what does that really mean? And what did it mean?
Joanna Antoine said, "No, ma'am, crack started in the black community." You right to a certain degree. Cocaine was prominent in the white community, in the suburbs, but it was too expensive for black people to afford to do anything with. It was too expensive. And it wasn't our drug. Our drug was weed.
Well, Gary, just for a second, define what crack actually was and where it came from, so that way people have a better understanding.
Crack cocaine came from, and I'll break it down in the simpler terms. You manufactured. This is where they got us caught up. They didn't have a problem with you doing powder cocaine, which we could not actually afford. But black people figured out, some drug dealers figured out, like the freeway Ricky Ross has figured out, how can we take this and make money off of it? So, of course, like Rick said, we had to become chemists. We had to figure out how to mix it with the baking soda and the water and blah, 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 blah. Okay, then we took what they had, which was too expensive for us. And then once we figured out we could do something with it, it dropped the sale of kilos by 80%. By 80%, it dropped the sale of kilos. So now we could afford to do what we wanted to do with it. So they took the crack cocaine, they became chemists, they mixed it up, and then all of a sudden you created this freebase where you didn't have to snort it, you could smoke it. You could smoke it. So now it drops the price, and a kilo back then when they were dealing with it was like 8,000. So drop that 8,000 about 80%. Oh, now we can afford 1,500 to 2,000 for a key. You see what I'm saying? So now you bring it into the hood, and this stuff was moving so fast. Shit, they were still trying to hustle weed, but it knocked the weed game out of business. It never knocked the weed game completely out of business. If you go and watch Narcos, and the way they put the series up, they started with the Pablos, and then they went to the Cali cartels. But now don't watch it like that. Go and watch the one about Felix, where they started with the weed. The weed is what took you to the crack, because Felix and them were pumping mad amounts of weed into the United States of America. And then all of a sudden he saw the crack game. He went and met Pablo. And if you're in the game, or if you know the game, you know who Pablo was. Pablo Escobar. And then once he got to Pablo, the crack game took off. But I want to ask y'all this, because y'all might know Dimitri and Donald. You know, you can't hide a rock back in the day. You hide a rock under a rock and they would find it. How the fuck you let 80 to 200 tons of cocaine come? You don't hide 200 tons of cocaine. Come through on a boat, through the Panama Canal, make it to the United States of America. How you just don't hide 200 tons of cocaine and then act like you don't know where the hell this came from? And then you want to penalize us. It's supply and demand. Back then they wanted it. And if you could get your hands on it, I don't give a damn what nobody tell me. Financially, it could change your life. If you were smart with it, and you're right, Donovan, a lot of black businesses opened. And I think that was part of the reason they started trying to penalize us. Because we found an out. And we started making the money. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that is how it started. Pot of cocaine we could not afford. We figured out a way to mix it up, made the prices drop 80%, and now we could afford it.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned Panama. How many of you guys remember, if you were young enough or old enough to remember, the invasion of Panama? Our boy was Manuel Noriega. He worked with the CIA hand in hand. Do you think we actually invaded Manuel Noriega because he was a threat to the United States? Do you know how many military bases we had in Panama? Just the thought of all those military bases down there, that this man is talking shit on the United States and all this other stuff, and he's going to do this. Panama doesn't even have a military. They don't even have a military. We went in there, Daddy Bush, had known Manuel Noriega for years. And the problem was that Manuel Noriega was cutting off the top, cutting his own deals, because that was one of the areas that staged where the cocaine was coming from. And here's for a lot of people that aren't in the military that don't know this. Military vessels, military aircraft are not subjected to customs. I mean, we have customs, but it's a military custom. You know, they're not going to be searching the plane like that. So if you went into another country and you're on a military aircraft, that is almost like being in an embassy. Nobody could come and look through the aircraft. So all these drugs are being flown in. And you guys that have military background, you guys know what I'm talking about. All these drugs are being flown in and floated in on merchant ships for the Defense Department, going through the docks unchecked, because the CIA and your tax dollars were writing the bill, and it just devastated our communities. Again, where can you go in the world and set up shop in any country in the world, and the people will patronize you for your business and give you a chance? Only in the Black community. You go to any other country and you try to set up a sushi shop in Japan, you can set it up, but nobody's going to patronize you. Only in the Black community. And, now, they're coming out with synthetic drugs, and they're trying to find the new next thing to put us on and get us addicted to, because, it's, these younger kids are into different types of shit. So this stuff is deep. And, here's the sad thing too. A lot of the major players that are part of this shit are still in government to this very day. They're still in government. Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton. You can go name any of your top officials. The new black guy, that's the Defense Department chief. He's part of it too.
Say, man, don't throw all their asses under the bus. Yeah. James Clyburn was there. Maxine Waters was there. You see what I'm saying? The Reverend Calvin Butts. You know what it is, homeboy. All of them was there. They all made money off the crack game.
Yep. And I want to just kind of piggyback off what you said earlier, Gary, about them, being able to find just a smidget of crack rock in somebody's car or on the floor. It's like, what do we have here? Some crack. Guess who's going to jail for 50 years? But you mean to say, like you said, you couldn't find it in, a bulk amount? And it wasn't too long ago that a JP Morgan Chase cargo carrier, they were found with a bunch of cocaine on it as well, not even a whole year ago. And so it's still happening. It's like, oops, Chase got some cocaine on a boat. How did that happen? But anyway, so the crack epidemic, the war on drugs, I guess we should say, really did three things, among other things. And one of them was making money, because Gary, like you said, and Donovan, they were bringing that cocaine from somewhere. The government was making money off of it, and Gary, I'm probably speaking above my pay grade here, but people who were selling dope in the neighborhoods, they had a big man, and if that man had a man, they had to answer to it. Ultimately, we know that connected back to somebody in a high place, probably the government. And the other part of it was to euthanize Black people. Crack cocaine killed a lot of Black people. And the other part was prison. We know, especially, with prisons being privatized and all of that, a lot of Black people went to prison, which is why, Joe Biden, he will say, well, I just thought it was dangerous and we just need to get these thugs off the street. No, it was deeper than that. We need to keep these people in prison for, loads and loads of years so that we can pay these private prisons the return on their investment, because they have to guarantee a 90% occupancy rate in these prisons to these investors in order for them to get a return on their investment. And so it's not advantageous to put people in jail for a year. Most of the time, if your sentence less than a year, you do jail time at the county. But if you get over a year, you're going to prison. And so we don't want people, and I'm speaking as a government, we don't want people going in for 365 days and coming out, and then we have to, fill that bed again. No. Even if it's a grandma, even if it's a girl who was riding shotgun with her dude who was a dope dealer, give her 10 to 20 years too, just for being in the car. I can tell you guys all the time, I have a cousin who gave the feds 14 years for just being in the car with her dude. So that's what it did. It made money. It euthanized Black people, and it imprisoned Black people. And all of it came back to making money for the man.
The question is why did they need to address it? After a while, it wasn't because it was decimating the Black community. It was because a CIA agent got killed in I think it was Sinaloa, and I can't remember his last name. His first name was Kiki. He got killed in Sinaloa. He was tortured when he figured out what was really going on and who the players were. So, the CIA knew what was going on. They were a part of what was going on. For them to try to catch some of these major drug supplies, they contracted the Contras. They contracted them. So, at the end of the day, was it really a war on drugs, or was it really just a war on Black people? It was a war on Black people, man. Because if it was a war on drugs, then like you said last year, how did we end up with dope on a JP Morgan barge? It's still going on. So before you decide to condemn the folks that's out there hustling to me, and I call it hustling, I don't call it crack dealing. Hustling is no worse than a woman going into a strip club shaking her ass. It's supply and demand. It's supply and demand. I'm telling you, and nobody had a problem with the crack like people talking about, man, because businesses that were already established were making tons of money off of it. You know, the Cadillac dealership definitely was making a bunch of money off of it. So, you know, even back in the day, the dude riding around in the van selling the shirts for you go to the club was making money off of it. So everybody was making money. So why would they all of a sudden want to stop it? When they killed Kiki over in Mexico, they had to address it because now you have a dead CIA agent on your hand. So now they want to come down on Escobar. Now they want to come down on the Cali cartel. But these are the same people that you had been in bed with. You had been in bed with. How do these people live over there, but yet they got 20, 30 bank accounts in the city of Miami? It doesn't work. And the dope was so prominent that on any given day, if you lived in Miami Beach, dope built Miami. Dope built the city of Miami and South Beach. That was like a little country town. South Beach was like a little country town. On any given day, Dimitri, you could just be walking the beach, walking your dog, and 30 keys of dope would just float up on the goddamn beach. It was so much dope, they just losing it in the ocean. And then all of a sudden, it got bad because the murder game came. And see, that's something I've always tried to teach cats, even in the city of Houston until this day. As long as you don't bring the murder game into the building, they don't give a damn if you selling dope. Right now, they don't give a damn if you selling dope as long as you can keep the murder game down. And youngsters that's listening, because I know y'all listen to me, y'all some of the dumbest motherfuckers in the world, man. Because, listen to what I just said, if the murder game ain't coming to town, they don't give a fuck what you're doing. Right now, 2021, they could care less. You know, when you watch The Wire, if y'all ain't never saw The Wire, go back and buy it. Stream it and watch it. That's why I say Elijah Cummings, motherfucker was a joke. He was a joke. Baltimore been fucked up for years. And then when you look at The Wire, one of the biggest players in Baltimore back then was a guy named Melvin. I can't remember his last name, but Melvin ended up being one of the characters in the fucking Wire. He was a creative consultant because he knew. So everything you see on The Wire was real. And the realest part of The Wire is when they took a neighborhood and they made it what they called a safe zone, where they allowed you to sell crack. As long as you wasn't killing, you could go into this zone, you could sell it, you could buy it, you could do whatever the fuck you want. Say, man, wasn't nothing wrong with crack. You get to choose if you want to smoke cigarettes. You get to choose. Cigarettes give you cancer. We got a cure for it. You get to choose if you want to drink alcohol, cirrhosis of the liver. Do they got a cure for it? They have never figured out how to truly tax it and make money off of it. So now that brings me to Texas, and then I'm going to turn this over to you, Donovan. Why won't you legalize weed? Because you good political motherfuckers still making money off of it. And you make more, it's always been proven that you make more illegal money than you'll ever make legal money off of the goddamn drug trade. That's why they won't make that shit legal in Texas.
Yeah, I have to agree with that wholeheartedly. But when you're talking about the Miami days, and especially in the 80s, think about the movie Scarface. Look at how many people glamorized the movie Scarface with Al Pacino and stuff like that. That's what they were talking about, how big the drug game was back in those days. I mean, he's sitting on his desk at the end of the movie and a big old mountain full of cocaine, and he just got his head in it. How many of you guys remember the Coast Guard in Florida? They were confiscating subs full of cocaine. These guys had converted subs to get it to the United States. But the one thing that I will never understand, and this never made sense to me, but I was in the military for a long time, so I couldn't really be around that stuff. But I had relatives and friends that were, doing what they had to do. Never looked down on them, ever. But there was so much money to be made. I never understood why the territorial, the greed of everybody fighting for the territory. It's almost, there's enough money out there for everybody to make it. But, it just came down, do you cross my territory? I crossed your territory. Next thing you know, the whole thing gets fucked up. And the other guy comes in. It's just, if we had better organization, if there was better organization in doing that, I think it like you said, as long as the murders and stuff didn't happen, we could have whole pro teams out there and stadiums built just based off the people that are selling drugs. But I'm going to go back to this, and this is my last thing. If you guys are really interested in knowing who's at the top of this drug chain and all this other stuff, the distribution of it and bringing it into the country, whenever you see the president meeting with certain businessmen and all these other things, because there's pictures of George Bush, as we know, he was a CIA agent, even though he denied it, but there's links to him to the CIA. He was meeting with these corporate drug dealers. And, some of the businesses went right through them. So this thing goes to the very top of our government. And they don't give a damn when it goes down to the poor neighborhoods. We're expendable to them, and it's really, really sad. But like you said, The Wire is a great series to watch. Some of us have lived this shit. So, when this is written, I think it's going to be a great, great movie when they tell the other side of it. It isn't always a negative. Look at some of the good things that were done in our neighborhood during that time.
I don't think nobody can tell a movie unless it's Spike, because he going to tell the truth. He going to tell the truth. But I tell you this here, Dimitri, and you think about it, and you talk about this here if you can. Everybody that the United States of America get in bed with, and then they figure out they can't fuck over them, they kill them. They couldn't fuck over Pablo no more, so they kill him. They couldn't fuck over Manuel Noriega, so they kill him. You see what I'm saying? And if they can't kill him, they're going to lock him away forever so that they can take over everything. They want to control the drug trade, but they don't have the means to go into these countries and actually be able to do it. So, like when 9/11 happened, Bush, ain't you have Bin Laden people hanging out with you at your ranch in Texas? Maybe that's why when it happened, you hurried up and got his people about the fucking country as soon as it happened. You see what I'm saying? Everybody they get in bed with, they either send them to jail or they fucking kill them. Dimitri.
And I just want to say this, and I'm speaking for me personally. I would never glorify the selling of any narcotics, cocaine, crack, any of that, simply because it leaves a devastating effect on everybody, from the person who does the drugs to the family and the community as a whole. We as Black people, as my dad calls us, and you guys have heard this term before, we are pyramid builders, meaning that we have done things as great as building pyramids. And so the last thing we need to do is resort to selling drugs. Now, I get it. There's the other side of the story and those type of things. But we are very innovating as people. And so, I can't really think of a whole lot of good things that came from selling drugs. And I'm really just speaking on a personal level, because I saw firsthand what it does to people. It takes people who are doing really good things with their life and by their family, and it leaves them in the back of alleys, doing things that they wouldn't ordinarily do if they were in their right mind and not doing, crack. Let's call it what it is. So I never want to glorify that. But ultimately, I think we fix a lot of the things in our community when we start, unifying, doing for self, because that's a large reason why we do certain things is because we lack resources, we lack money, and so you're not gonna starve. A man comes out of jail with a felony, can't get a job anywhere. What's he gonna do? Sit up and starve? Just sit and starve? No, he's gonna figure out a way to feed himself. Now, that's what he's supposed to do as a man. He's supposed to figure it out. And unfortunately, drugs, it's just one of those avenues. And so I just wanted to just make that clear. I don't think we are advocating that drug selling could be made positive, if you will. But Donovan, as far as the greed is concerned, there's never enough of more. People who are greedy are looking for more, even though they have, which is why we look at something like capitalism nowadays. Jeff Bezos made $10 billion last week, and Facebook was right behind him. Jeff Bezos is on track to being about $200 billion in wealth, the richest man in the world. Now, remember, he gave half of his billions to his wife when the divorce. That was a year ago. And so the point that I'm making is it greed? Yeah, it's greed to some degree. And to those people, there's never enough of more. I can always use more, right? And then another reason why the white people got involved is because it started to visit their neighborhoods. It started to go into suburbia. It was cool when it was in the hoods, but when it started to go over to their neighborhoods, you think about it, music, everything you can think of that was prevalent with black people, when their people started to get a hold of it, then it was a problem. So
the crack game was capitalism at its best. Regardless of what they want to tell you or how they want to spin it, the crack game was capitalism at its best. And you know what? I agree with you. When we became better football players, they moved the goalposts on us. When our kids had the ability to come out of high school to play basketball, they moved the goalposts on us. When our kids started excelling in school, they moved the goalposts on us. You see what I'm doing? See what I'm saying? So crack was an outlet for people. No, I'm not advocating that you sell drugs. I'm really not. But I'd be damned if I talk down on you if you do. Because I don't know your situation. But when I'm saying, and I need y'all to think about this, the people that benefited off of it. Funeral directors made a killing off of the crack game. They didn't give a damn. The pastors made a killing off of the crack game. The politicians, locally, statewide, federally, made a killing off the crack game. Man, how many of these motherfuckers actually own stock in private prisons, and how many have been owning stock in private prisons? They made tons of money off the game, and they still making money off of it. But your new crack dealer is the big pharmaceuticals. They the new crack dealers. So when you running out there to take the vaccine and all that bullshit, they making a killing off their new crack game, man. Donovan?
I can't agree with you more. I cannot agree with you more. And since you brought up the vaccine, 2 new strains have come out. One from South Africa. They say that one is a motherfucker. So you might get vaccinated, but you might have to get boosters. So like you said, the pharmaceuticals are making a killing. They don't even have to push a narcotic or a painkiller to get you addicted. Now, I think the new game is these vaccines, because everything's mutated. I mean, they can't solve it. So now they're trying to push this, get this vaccine. Oh, now you need a booster. It'll probably never go away. So you're gonna have to get an annual booster. These people are about making money. And I mean, it's the new Nino Brown. It's just the new Nino Brown, on steroids.
Biden is the new Nino Brown. Biden is the new Nino Brown. You can't get mad at us when it's you who's sending this shit here. You can't get mad at the violence in the community when it's y'all pumping these guns into the community. You see what I'm saying? It is what it is. And you said something I've been saying for years, Demetri. You cannot, and I've told this to the Houston Police Department, I can't tell a man not to feed his family. I can't. If he tried and he can't find nothing, I can't tell him not to get out there and hustle, because a man gonna be a man no matter what. And in my world, I've always said this: to take care of my family, I will rob and steal to take care of my goddamn family, man. So I'm not telling you to sell drugs, but I ain't finna talk down on your ass though.
And yeah, and so unfortunately, that's the environment that's been created. You've created an environment to force people's hands into doing something they would never dream of. I mean, I knew one of my closest female friends sold drugs, and she sold drugs because her mom and dad was addicted to crack, and she happened to be the oldest of the siblings, and so she was like, "While it's destroying my mom and dad, I'm still in school myself." So I have to, she felt like she had to take whatever opportunity she could, and she started selling drugs. And she did well. I hate to say it, but she took care of her 5 other siblings that were left up to her to take care of because her mom and dad were in the streets addicted to crack. And so when that environment is created, what do you expect for people to do? But again, it's by design, because they know when people get out, they can't go get a good, honest job. Nobody really wants to go flip a burger at, McDonald's. Is cute for a minute, but you're a fully grown man with a wife and kids. You're not taking care of nothing with that. So you get out, and they know they're going to get out and go back to what got them in there in the first place. And there goes the recidivism rate. People go back. Because what are they going to do? And I hate when people say, well, an honest living. There's nothing honest about paying a man minimum wage. There's nothing honest about that. Is it a reputable job? Yeah, he's not breaking any laws, scooping fries, but that's not honest work. That's degrading work. And nobody wants to do that outside of high school. I mean, let's just keep it real.
Steve, I'm gonna put this up because you say no excuse to rob. Let me say this here to you, brother. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People can't pay their bills. Some of them can't work. The bulk of them can't work. Girls, and excuse me, Dimitri, girls are selling pussy for $30, like Donovan said. When you put us in a position where we have no choice, you can't condemn what these people are going to do, because they are going to survive by any means necessary. They are going to survive. Come on, bro. But the people that you need to be mad at is not the young girls doing what they do or the boys hustling or whatever. Be mad at the motherfuckers that make it easy for them to do it. The ones who keep making it easy to buy this shit, to get this shit. This shit is not made here. It is shipped here. It's shipped here, man. So, I want you to think about that. And I got to say it like this here. No disrespect to my women that's listening, or the lady on the panel. Young girls is selling pussy to survive right now, man. What can they do? The best they get out the deal is an increase in some fuck-ass food stamps. Then if they get out there and they sell them to get the money that they actually need to pay a bill, then we want to put them in jail for that too. Why don't you just give us our money, man? This is why they won't give us our money, man. They're going to keep us in bag mode and keep us in a position where we have to do dumb shit like this. Now, find you a new hustle. That's why dudes my age, when I see them doing good, I hug them, and, man, it's good, man. We laugh about the old days, because, dog, if you survived the old days, you a true gladiator, partner. You a true gladiator, because survival wasn't in the cards for us back then. It was, you had to be the smartest hustler that you could be, because it wasn't in the cards for us back then. Donovan?
Yeah, let's keep this going for a quick second. Steve Brannigan, I'm looking at your post, and it looks like you're a Caucasian man. And I understand what you're saying about, robbing's not good, and what about the robbery victim? But, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but your people have robbed and stole and murdered and did all this other stuff. And I don't see, I think it's kind of hypocritical that you're on the panel and you're worried about all that stuff. You weren't worried about that when it came to founding this country and murdering millions of Native Americans, enslaving hundreds of thousands of Black people. Well, what about those victims? What about those victims? I mean, and like I said, I'm not here to, you're not here to represent, and we're not here to castigate you, but a lot of my white friends, I got to really tell them, put yourself out of your whiteness and put yourself in these other people's shoes. How could you sit there and say robbing's never good or whatever? You guys, I'm paraphrasing, you guys did it. So if it works for you, why wouldn't it work for us? I mean, you guys set the blueprint. You guys have said, this is what you need to do to make a country. This is what you need to do to thrive in a country. They did it in Australia. If you look about what's going on and wrong in the world for the last 400 years, the problem isn't people of color and all these different cultures. It's where all these white people are. You're going to take a whole bunch of English criminals and put them down in Australia. They do God knows what the hell they did down there to the Aboriginals and stuff. And, they didn't ask for the money. They didn't purchase that country. They stole it. So I just think it's kind of condescending and kind of, messed up that you're worried about robbing and, and doing the Christian thing when it just doesn't sound right.
Well, what have we been robbed of? Our life and our liberty. You took our jobs in the 80s. You had us begging for fucking cheese. Dog, we were standing, my mama used to stand in the line to get the free cheese. You robbed us. But the minute that you think you're going to go through what we've been through, you immediately put something in place to fix it. Look at your opiate crisis. You addressed that shit straight out the gate. Oh, it became priority number one. But until this day, you've not done anything to fix what crack did to us. Nothing has been done. Get out of your bubble, brother. Get out of your bubble. You live in a bubble. You will never go through the shit that we've been through. I'm sorry. I don't want it to be a black and a white conversation, but I'm telling you, white folks, you ain't been through the hell that black people been through. We've been living in a pandemic since we got off them goddamn boats. Dimitri?
And then also, I believe his name was Steven. You should just ask yourself, were Black people robbing and stealing and killing to the degree that you guys believe that we're doing when we were in the motherland before y'all, came to visit us? Were we that over there? And I also like to take Robert's comment. How you doing? He says, ending recidivism requires comprehensive criminal justice reform, reentry, bail reform, decriminalization of marijuana, ban the box, and ending cite and release. It requires legislating out, quote unquote, systematic racism in our criminal justice system. It trips me out that all of these components have not been dealt with in our most democratic states, including California. Well, I mean, it doesn't trip me out. You know why? Because we overall aren't asking them to, especially the Democrats. We don't ask them to do any of that overall. We just give them our votes, never really expect them to do anything because we gonna vote blue no matter who. We want the big bad boogeyman Trump out of office. And that's what we got. And we know that, especially in our democratic areas, states or whatever, in our neighborhoods. These people have been in office 20, 30, 40 years and they did nothing. And yet we continue to put them back in office. And so I don't understand it. I'm not speaking to you necessarily. I know you get it. But I don't understand why we are bewildered that, nothing ever changes, especially from a legislative point of view, is because they know, like I said, and I'll keep bringing up Ice Cube. Look at how Negroes fought Ice Cube over Joe Biden. I can imagine Joe Biden just sitting there like, look at these Negroes. They gonna tear each other up over me. It must be nice. And so we never ask them to do anything. And when somebody does come along and say, hey, how about a little something for my peoples? We put on the boxing gloves for white supremacy. So that's why they never legislate on behalf of getting rid of, or doing crime reform and those things, because we never really hold their feet to the fire in doing so.
We talk about the murder in the Black community. Let's talk about the murders that were perpetuated when you stole us from our homeland. Let's talk about the murders that were committed when Christopher Columbus showed up. Let's talk about them murders. Let's talk about the murders when you wanted Texas and California and you killed all the Mexicans and you stole from them. See, when we steal, it's a problem. When we murder, it's a problem. You worried about black on black crime. I'm worried about the fact that you committed white on black crime for over 400 years. Do you want to have this conversation with me? If you want me to justify anything on this side, then justify why you created the murder game and now your ass is trying to push it off on somebody else. You're not going to get rid of, you really fucking around with justice reform. You fucking around with racism because some of this shit is so easy to solve, but you make money off all this shit. That's why you don't want to solve it. Don't talk to me about black on black crime. Because if you hadn't pumped that dope and them fucking guns into my neighborhoods, then it wouldn't even be that way. We were peaceful people. Yeah, we had some fucked up shit going on every now and then. But it's really y'all that was the motherfuckers, man. Y'all some motherfuckers, man. Oh, man, you want me to tell the truth? That's why you don't want these kids to know about their history. That's why you don't teach us history. You never really taught it to us. Because it's y'all that's the fucking murderers. It's y'all that's the goddamn drug dealers. Your people, the people that sit in the White House right now, it's them. So don't talk to me about the kid on the block. I can reach that kid on the block. I can make him understand. We can turn that kid's mind frame around. But we have a hard problem turning y'all fucking mind frames around in Washington, D.C., who are actually perpetrating this goddamn mass genocide on my goddamn people, man.
No, I mean, yeah, no doubt. And so, again, just really in closing, I know we got to get out of here. And I'll go ahead and render my closing remarks. I see that up there, Donovan Holmes to the polls. I don't even want to touch that one. But yeah, so
no. What I was saying was that's what the Democratic Party was telling everybody. You remember that campaign that they had, twerking to the polls and all that other stuff. This is the kind of lunacy that we deal with,
Right. That's what we get. That's what we do in order to, put on a show for the oppressor, I guess. So yeah, that makes sense. But I would just say, really, in closing, the war on drugs is multifaceted. It's not just, and then Steve, thank you so much for being here. We enjoyed the conversation. But yeah, there's levels to the war on drugs. It's not just, we got to get the crack pipe out of black people's hands. It's more to it. There's a beginning, a middle, and then there's an end. And then there's an author who made the war on drugs, the story of war on drugs, possible. So those are the questions we should be asking ourselves before we just throw out these blanket statements. Oh, there's a war on drugs. Just say no to drugs. We need to get the whole story. So.
Absolutely. Again, this is the greatest conversation on the internet. And we don't call you guys fans. We call you guys friends because we learn just as much from you guys as you guys do from us. Matter of fact, we probably learn more from you guys than you guys do from us. So thank you guys for spending your time with us. I'm going to keep mine short today. I just want to give a big shout out to my homie, Candace Owens, who gave birth to a black baby. And she's been getting a lot of I guess, memes and stuff in regards. And, let's keep the kids out of it. But I know where people are going with that. All that raccooning she was doing. And now she's seeing what a young black person, especially a young black man, is going to deal with in dealing with America. So Candace, congratulations.
Let me just go and just jump in there really quick. And I ain't wanted to talk about the kids, but I'm gonna quote that of Dave Chappelle when he says that Candace Owens is a raggedy, rotten bitch. And I don't feel sorry for her at all because she was talking about other people's kids. George Floyd was somebody's kid. Tamir Rice was somebody's child. Ahmaud Arbery was somebody's child. And she didn't mind taking her raggedy, wretched ass on Twitter and Facebook and talking about, that's what they get. Breonna Taylor was somebody's child. So, excuse me, y'all, I don't like to use salty language a lot. But fuck her and that white horse she rode in on.
Say, man, I mean, you said it the best way it needs to be said, because if you hadn't said it, I was going to say it. I don't feel sorry for Candace Owens. Fuck Candace Owens and everything that come with her. So, it is what it is. I wanna close by saying we did our first fundraiser for the school board run the other day, man. I thank you guys for donating. And if you donated to me, go into my inbox, send me your name and your address, because I gotta make sure that you on my campaign finance report. Put the amount that you sent me, your name, your address. We're gonna put that on there. Say, man, I mean, it's a war on drugs. That's what they say. I say it's a war on black people, and it is what it is, man. Tomorrow we switched it up. We were supposed to talk about it today, and Demetra said she wanted to come hang out with us. So tomorrow, everybody seemed to have a problem with the chucks and pearls. I'm watching school systems want to penalize teachers for wearing the shirt and all this shit. Hold on a second. Y'all ain't have no problem with that MAGA shit. So chucks and pearls versus MAGA. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night, man. We're going to talk about that, man. Say, man, I want to thank you for tuning in to the hottest show in social media history. I want to thank my good friend, Donovan Sadiq, the Queen, Demetra Kane, and I'm the 5-star general. You know what it is, man. Real black media. And we ain't scared to talk about the hottest subjects that come down. Tasha Jackson, I salute you. But I promise you one thing. You will not be in that seat long. I got something for that ass, partner. And tell your daddy, Sylvester, stay out my goddamn lane, because I come for him too. Until tomorrow, we'll holler at y'all.